And so that's what the world does. It always takes something very real and true that God has made us for, and that God himself has created and provided, and it imitates it, as in Genesis 11. And then you can, now I ask you just to have in the side of your mind, not in the forefront of it, otherwise you really won't be able to concentrate on the scripture or on all that we say, but have in the back of your mind as you read this Facebook, Twitter, Genesis 11. Now the whole earth had one language and few words. And as men migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, and it was like an imitation of what heaven really is. Heaven is togetherness, there's no question. And of course that was thought to be the secret. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth." And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because here the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. And of course, I think all of us feel the same, but we wonder what on earth is the Father at, you know. That's a strange story. And it's hard just to know what the point of it is. And then, of course, gradually you begin to see, well, certainly it was them beginning to get together and to put together their strength and their power. It was the beginning, in a way, of the world trying to establish its own power and its own life, and trying to do whatever it wanted. And of course we can see how it ties up with the obvious expression of Jesus, that you could either live depending on him and moved by him within you, or you could live depending on the world and depending on its way of operating. And ever from that early time, of course, we've been very clear that those are the two possibilities for all of us. You can either live by the ability that God gives you, or the things he provides for you in clothing and food, or you can decide to live by what the world can give you through its business and its jobs and its work. Or in our terms that we have used in connection with the tripartite division of the personality, we have said, well, you can get your good opinion of yourself from God, from pleasing him and from doing what he wants you to do, and the satisfaction you get from that, or you can get it from the world, and how many of them think you're the greatest, and you're the best singer, and you're the best person they know. And so it goes on with the needs that we have. We can fulfill them either from the world, or we can fulfill them from God himself. And so we can see how this is part, of course, of the world attempting to rise up and provide for itself. So it's the old division, you remember, between your strength. Is your strength in your horses, or is it in the strength of the Lord? That is continually put before Israel in the Old Testament times. Are you trusting in your horses and the power of your army? And that's why they got into trouble with numbering the army, because obviously they were depending on the numbers they had in the army, and that's what was giving them confidence. Or are you depending on the Lord alone, who can give you strength and power? And of course Jesus then is the plainest, of course, exponent of the whole thing, and it comes up very, very strongly, you know, when you think of it's either Christ or it's the mob, isn't it? I mean, Christ was not crucified really by thoughtful judges who sized things up. There were judges, but they are not what crucified him. What crucified him was the mob yelling, "Crucify him, crucify him, crucify him." And even the words of Pilate are significant, you know, or the words that are addressed to Pilate. If you do this, you are not the Caesar's friend. You are not Caesar's friend. And the poor guy, of course, was caught in that, because it was the Jews, the religious leaders, ready to go over his head and report him to Rome, you know, that he was fomenting a revolution here by allowing this man to live. So, of course, it's why the tears? Because it's such a plain, such a plain setting forth, you know, of this old pressure of friends. You know, it's a misuse, of course, of the word friends. The true friends are what we need. But of course, it's the funny use we make of it now in the media, in the mass media, the whole business of will you be my friend? We feel kind of corny ourselves when we use the term, and we don't like it too much, and we feel strange, you know, will you be somebody's friend, or etc., etc. But it's interesting that it's the same word that was used, you know, to get Pilate to do the job on Jesus. And so it brings up that whole issue of where we are in our world today, and where we are in our social media today. And we all are very aware, yes, we certainly want our lives to be guided by the Spirit of Him in whom we were created. We know that's why we're here, so that the Spirit of Jesus will be able to lead the life that will please His Father and will draw us into their family increasingly. That's what we want. And we want to move from within, from Him. And we certainly don't want to move from without, from what people think we should do. We can see often that we've learned down through the years, we've learned, don't do what everybody says you should do, but do what Jesus tells you to do, whatever that may cost you. So it's quite interesting when you start to apply the whole thing to what we all want to say. We all want, I think, not one of us would not want to say, Facebook is a great thing. It's a great thing. And Twitter, they're great. They encourage people to communicate with one another. And isn't that what you read? That church, that heaven itself will be a place of communion, a place of fellowship. And yet it's important to see that right at the beginning of the Bible, it's indicated that that can be turned around, that can be perverted. The whole idea of fellowship itself is not just a being together. If the fellowship results in the power of humanity as opposed to the power of God, then it's not right. And so you begin to see now, all right, what is good? Well, obviously there are many good things. It's very useful. I think what you said about, what Marty said about, in an attempt to say what he thought Facebook was and Twitter was, it's what I thought it was really in a way. It's having a phone book of your friends that is categorized and that also includes all the emails that they may have sent on certain subjects to other people. So it's really like a glorified email list that is categorized, and you can pop on, you can see, oh, here this person was talking about this and said this, and etc., etc. So in that way, it seems just an easy, innocent means of communication. And it seems to me, insofar as it's that, it's just a great thing. But we know fine well that it is much more than that. And indeed, I think it was Marty commented, you didn't use the word LinkedIn, but it is, of course, one of the foremost business versions of mass media, the LinkedIn system, where you can use it to contact people who will be useful to you in your business, or people with whom you work in business. And so obviously it can in some way go beyond just communicating little pieces of information to one another. It can also influence people, and you can communicate with people, and you might say, use it. And then, of course, once you've said that, you have to admit that, oh, that's one of the reasons the jewelers or anybody goes on to it with their business. They use it to get people to buy their product. And of course, it's a short step into the whole area of advertising. And then it's a very short step into probably what is, in a way, the most dangerous part of it, because it's so close to Orwell's 1984. And that is the area that, in a way, the world is protesting against, not quite sure why it's protesting, but feeling that something is wrong with Google's almost offensive interest in what your habits are, or where you buy your shoes, or where you buy your bread. And then, of course, you begin to realize why even Microsoft now, in their latest Windows 10, are interested. Will you let us? Indeed, you remember, it's the accepted way. You have to actually accept yourself out of it. Otherwise, they will keep track of where you have been, all the locations that you've been in. And they say, will you let, in Windows 10, I don't know if you've read it, I've read it just because I put another Windows 10 on another computer yesterday. And of course, there it is, point number 4 or 5, you know, will you let Microsoft keep record of the places you go, the locations you go? Of course, I said no. And why do they want it? Well, you know why. It is just unbelievable. Because they will then know where you are and that you're coming to a shop that sells shoes. And that shop does not sell shoes like the ones you've bought in the past. But further down the street, there's another shop that sells shoes like the shoes that you buy. And it will prompt you that that shop is there. And then you get into all the subtlety of Google running your life. Oh yes, much more than that, because if you ever book a ticket to an event, Google knows the way you will go, because it knows your home address, and it knows how you will drive, and it knows what restaurants you will pass, and it knows that it can even tell by the person that you perhaps have emailed and are going to meet what kind of restaurant that person will like. Then it begins to get spooky. Then it begins to get an offensive, oppressive attempt to control your life. To control your life. And it seems to me that then you're getting into a realm that is anti-God. is louder. The crucify is so strong you can't hear the still small voice. The crucify from the mob is so strong because there it is, there is the shop in front of your eyes because they give you a photo picture of it, and there are the shoes, like the shoes that you have on. And so the voice is so strong that it's almost impossible to do anything else. In fact, let's just be honest with each other. We haven't the time to think of something else, and that gives you an answer. That tells you what to do, so you do it. But of course the disastrous thing is that that is listed in her algorithm as a place that you have been and a thing that you have done, and then that is added to the information that they have on you. And what happens? Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The poor mind has less and less renewing because it doesn't need to work. It can just look at what your computer has suggested that you should do. And after all, who knows you like Google? Who knows you as well as your own computer? Who knows you as well as somebody who has tracked your steps over the past week? No. Over the past month? No. Over the past year? No. Over the past lifetime? Then it begins to get very dangerous. And one might say that that time has already arrived in our society. Algorithms. It was what enabled me to at last get hold of the business. Difficulty in the restaurant was, Ken Berman would say, well, I made hamburgers today and they really went well. And I don't know how much to order next week in meat. And I said, well, why not? You note it down, and then you remember when it comes to ordering from the butcher, then you remember that. And I looked at the scraps of his notes in a week's time, and then in 2 weeks' time, and then in 3 weeks. Well, he'd lost part of the scraps of the notes, and the notes themselves were so complex that he couldn't read them and I couldn't read them, and so I got into the business of trying to guess how much meat we would need next week and then next month, in the light of how many hamburgers we'd sold. And then 1, 2, 3 fell from heaven. Mm-hmm. And for me it was the beginning of controlling the business. 1, 2, 3, the Lotus 1, 2, 3 spreadsheet. Because I was able to put in, as I did, I put in the hamburgers we sold today, hamburgers tomorrow, hamburgers the next day. And then on the spreadsheet, I just put in formulae. I put in if B1 was that much, then C1 is that much, then D1 is that much, right down to 6 months. No wonder of wonders for a guy who had to pay the bills. I could put down next year. I could put down December. I could see the whole year. I could have a flow of money the whole year flowing through the waves week by week. And at last, I knew where it was. It was how I devised this silly old projection system. I said to Greg, did we sell many of those? Julie Adams. Oh yeah, we sold them. Well, now, what will we sell next month so that we'll know what to order? I said, no, I don't know. And again, we put it into the spreadsheet. and I began to write formulae in the spreadsheet. If we sold this many here, this many there. I'm still working on them with 3 vital issues in the algorithm. One, seasonal. There are seasonal variations. It's not enough to say, I sold 6 earrings yesterday. I need to know what will they sell the same next season, in the summer season, as they did in the winter season. Seasonal. Then life cycle. I'm still working on life cycle with them. Life cycle. Because the thing sells very well or maybe reasonably well, and the curve goes like that and down. And in the light of the life cycle of an item, what will you do? So you have different, so you build, really I didn't realize, I didn't know the word algorithm and didn't think of them as algorithms, but what I did was build algorithms into 1, 2, 3, and of course that's the system that we still use. Not more complex. In fact, I wonder if he still has the life cycle business worked out. But it enabled a person to know what was going to happen next year. And then wonder of wonders. Now the story in the computer world is, you know, we're beginning to question our algorithms, because you see, what they do is measure what has happened in the past, and they pass those prejudices on to what they say will happen in the future. And I think to myself, oh, you didn't know that, did you? But it is a weird situation now, you know, because fewer and fewer people are thinking. How many have a touch with Jesus, Spirit within, in regard to what they will do with their practical lives? Maybe somewhere in some monastery there is some dear heart that spends time in his presence. But the ordinary person, they could not hear if they tried. These other voices are so strong. The person doesn't even need to think now. They just need to turn the computer on and see what Google or what somebody else is telling them to do, or what they have done before. And of course there's a coldness and a death about it all, because it's just repeating, except for the fact that there are other people involved. There are all kinds of people who are involved in trying to get you to buy their product. And so more and more business people and more businesses are pumping their information into the whole system, so that algorithm is almost a laugh now. It is so complex, and it is affected and influenced and operated and manipulated by so many that the last thing you can believe you have there is even a fair picture of what you've done in the past. But as far as following it for what you're going to do in the future, if I am able, with my little ability, to change the algorithm so that we remember that this is autumn and not spring, and therefore the numbers will not be the same, have I not the ability to vary it in all kinds of other ways that have no relationship to reality at all? And so it seems to me that we're facing the same thing as we've always faced. Are you going to live by the world's direction, or are you going to let Jesus live in your life and guide you and express himself through And I listen to you, and you know, I love you, so I'm predisposed to want to agree with you, and I listen to you, and I so often think to myself, well, what does it matter? You know, it's okay, that's right, but it's not doing any harm. But really, it is doing harm. Really, it is. Really, even if it's you, you know, and you're, you know, well, you know yourself. It's easy for Colleen to feel, oh, well, I'm not a computer person, you know. Yeah, but you can be enough involved in a computer to be influenced by these things and to be perverted by these things without really wanting to at all. Just in all innocence, thinking, oh, this is great. This is great. If you say, can't you use some of it? Of course you can use information. You can use information that you see, as long as you're aware that the information is under your control, that it's good information, and then that you're making the decision. But it seems to me the other way is just slowly bringing quickly upon you the old disease, you know. Bringing quickly upon you the old passivity of mind and the old passivity of action and decision that eventually leads to the deterioration of the whole personality that we've seen in so many people. So I think there is a strong reason for saying to yourself, yes, I want to be conformed to the image of his Son. I want to be conformed. That's why I was made. All things work together for good to those that love him. And that good is that they may be conformed to the likeness of his Son. And that's what I want to be. I don't want to be conformed to the image of this world. I don't want to be conformed through a passivity of mind. I want to be transformed by the renewing of my mind. So, if you say to me, well, yes, but isn't it kind of fun? Can you fiddle around, you know? And sure, you can fiddle around. If that's what we're here to do, just fiddle around. Sure, you can do all kinds of things. And certainly we can communicate with our friends. That's easier to do that than to phone them or to write a letter. That's great. But it seems to me, as soon as we get into this situation where we're allowing this to subtly guide our lives and to subtly influence the decisions we make, then I think we've lost it. Now, as far as ordinary people are concerned, I think it's a deadly situation. I think it's a hideous situation. Because all kinds of people, right from the guy Zuckerberg, right from him himself, right from the guys at the top, right from even dear Bill Gates, right from the top guys, they are all committed to this kind of thing and think it's wonderful. And I don't think they're terribly bothered. I'm afraid many of the top guys aren't bothered because they don't run their lives that way at all. They have very lively minds and they're always thinking of new things. So they really don't care. But if they do care anyway, they have too much to lose to change it. So there aren't a lot of people who are thinking outside the box. Everybody's thinking about, don't forget to think outside the box. And we all have our little terminologies, you know, to comfort ourselves that we're really very individualistic people, in spite of the fact that we're all becoming more and more like robots. But that's okay because we're making the robots more and more like people as far as we're able. But it is, I think it's a dangerous situation, you know. And I think the old people, I think, would see that. You know, the old people who told us not to go to the movies and not to, they would see the conformity issue, you know. We don't see it. We think that's what life is today. And then, of course, you know, I haven't touched probably the more serious side of it, most serious side of it is where you are really being conformed to the image of this world, where you are really changing subtly into a kind of automaton, where you are actually taking on the values of the internet, taking on the values of Facebook, taking on the values of Twitter, and you become preoccupied with, did you see what so-and-so said? Did you see what he thinks? Do you see? I know enough as a school teacher to know it takes a strong mind to keep following all those things and yet keep its own opinion separate. You either are preoccupied with the dear person in whom you were created and who is inside you and who has all kinds of wonderful things that he wants you to do and to be. You either have your eyes on him or you have your eyes on the world. And it seems to me it requires quite a strong willpower now. And one of the benefits of what we have together here, it takes a strong fellowship to enable you to walk upright with your eyes on Jesus. So I think, you think it through. I was concerned because I thought some of these things, but thought, you don't want to be an old spoilsport and talk against something that has no harm in it. But gradually I began to see this is a subtle way that the spirit of this world has of taking over your life. And you need to be aware of it. I'm very aware. You have all kinds of relatives, all kinds of dear friends who think it's just wonderful, And with you, there's no harm in saying, Mom, I did this, or Dad, I did that, or Joan, I did this. Sure, that's just fun. That's just instead of lifting the phone and phoning them. But it's when that becomes, when Facebook or Twitter or the communications become an important influence in your life, that's when you lose it. I would also submit to you that whether it's Google or any other company, because they're all at it in some form, it's very questionable receiving their suggestions for what you should do. And I think, Renee, you're right when you say to yourself, how did they know that I wrote that letter to so-and-so? Well, I'd say immediately, that's the end of me with them, because they're obviously spying on me, and they can too easily outthink me on it, simply because the machine is working all the time. I'm not working all the time to think, oh, I did right to so-and-so. But that machine is working all the time and is flawless. And it's working out not only that, but there's an algorithm that it is using to make use of that fact. And I'm sure it is a very good heart. I'm sure it's only working out good things for me, to make me more like Jesus. No, to make me more useful to them and a benefit to their bottom line. So I just think, be sensible, and most importantly, why are you here? And what place has he in your day-to-day decisions? What place has he? Or as the Stuart Kenzie's poem says, does he crouch against the wall? I'd cry for Calvary because of your indifference to him.